When I was a kid, I used to think the phrase family is everything was some kind of universal truth, like gravity or math. My name is Braden. I'm 23 now, but when this story started, I was just turning 18, and everything I thought I knew about family was about to blow up in my face. The funny part is, it all started with a cake. A cake and a scholarship letter. So let's rewind a bit. I grew up in a small town, the kind where everyone knows your business before you even know it yourself. My parents, Karen and Dale, weren't the worst people in the world, but they definitely weren't the best. My mom always had a short fuse and a long list of things to complain about. And my dad, well, let's just say Dale was more interested in his man cave than his kids. He had this old recliner he basically lived in. If he wasn't yelling at the TV, he was yelling at me. I was never the golden child. That title belonged to my older brother, Caleb. Classic golden boy stuff. Popular, athletic, decent enough grades, and totally incapable of doing any wrong in my parents' eyes. Me? I was the quiet one. The reader. The kid who stayed late at school to help clean up the library because it was better than going home. I kept my head down, worked my butt off, and did what I was told mostly. I wasn't perfect, but I was trying. Despite everything, I actually got really into school. It became my escape. I loved math and computer science, and I poured myself into it. No one in my family understood it. They called me a little nerd, or the future IT guy who'll fix our Wi-Fi for free. It was always said with a laugh, but the jokes got old. Still, I kept going, because deep down, I believed that if I just did well enough, maybe they'd finally see me. Senior year rolled around, and I applied to every scholarship I could find. I wasn't naive. I knew my parents weren't going to pay for college. They made that clear for years. If you want to go to college, you better figure it out yourself, my dad would say between sips of cheap beer. We're not made of money. So I did figure it out. I applied to a prestigious STEM program at a university 3 states away. It was a long shot, but I got in. Not only that, I landed a full-ride scholarship, tuition, housing, meals, everything. I remember opening the letter alone in my room, staring at the words like they might vanish if I blinked too hard. It felt like freedom printed on thick paper. I cried. Quietly, of course. Wouldn't want Caleb to hear and start in with his usual, don't be soft routine. I waited a few days before I told them. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd be proud. That maybe this would be the thing that shifted something. I didn't expect balloons or a party, but a good job would have been nice. Instead, I got silence. My mom barely glanced at the letter. She was watching one of those wedding shows she liked, half a glass of wine in her hand. That's nice, Braden, she muttered, not even looking up. My dad skimmed it, then said, so they're just giving you free money, huh? Must be nice. Caleb wasn't even home. Probably out with his girlfriend, or more likely, getting plastered with his friends and sending it to the family group chat like he always did. Classic Caleb. A week later, it was my birthday. My 18th. I wasn't expecting much. Maybe a small dinner or a store-bought cake, if I was lucky. But weirdly enough, my mom called me downstairs that morning, saying they had something special planned. My heart actually fluttered. I thought maybe they were surprising me, that they'd come around. There was a cake. Store-bought, like I guessed, with my name on it in blue frosting. A little lopsided, but still, it was something. My dad even shook my hand and said, well, you're a man now. Time to start acting like one. It was the closest thing to affection I'd gotten from him in years. We all sat down at the table. My mom poured herself another glass of wine. It was barely noon, and then she got this weird look on her face, like she was bracing for something. That's when my dad said it. So about that scholarship money, we've been thinking. You don't really need all that for yourself, right? I blinked. What? You're still living here, he said. We've fed you, paid your bills, kept a roof over your head all these years. It's only fair you contribute back. Your mom and I are behind on a few things. Wait, I said slowly. You want me to give you my scholarship money? My mom chimed in. Not all of it, honey. Just what's reasonable. You'll still have enough for college. We're just asking for a bit of help. That's what families do. We take care of each other. I just sat there, stunned. My mind couldn't catch up to what was happening. They were serious. They really, truly thought I was going to hand over money that I had earned, something that was meant to be my ticket out, and give it to them. Like it was nothing. No, I said. They looked at me like I'd just cursed at them. My dad's face darkened. Excuse me. I said no. I repeated. That money is for college. I earned it. I'm not giving it to you. My mom put her wine glass down a little too hard. Don't be selfish, Braden. After everything we've done for you. I laughed. It just came out. What have you done? You've ignored me for 18 years unless you needed something. You didn't pay for any of my schooling. You didn't help with applications. You didn't even drive me to the college tour last year because you were too busy relaxing. And now that I've got something good, you want to take it? That was it. The air in the room shifted. My dad stood up so fast the chair scraped loudly against the tile. His voice boomed. You ungrateful little brat. This is our house. We've put up with your attitude for too long. If you're going to disrespect us like this, you can get out. What? I said, blinking. You heard me, he said. You're 18 now. That means you're grown. You want to be grown? Then act like it. Pack your stuff and leave. You're not welcome here if you're going to talk to us like that. My mom didn't stop him. She just crossed her arms and stared at the cake. The one with my name on it. The one that now felt like a joke. I left that night. No warning. Just packed a duffel bag with what I could carry, grabbed my acceptance letter, and walked out the door. They didn't stop me. They didn't call after me. Caleb didn't even text. And that was that. I spent the next few months couch hopping and working part-time jobs until the fall semester started. I didn't have much, but I had my place in the program, and I was determined to make it work. The first year was hard. Really hard. I worked late nights, studied during every spare moment, and learned how to stretch $1 into a week's worth of meals. But I did it. And then I kept doing it. 5 years later, I'm not the same kid who walked out of that house with tears in his eyes and a duffel bag in his hand. I've got a great job now, software engineer at a firm in the city. I've got my own apartment, my own car, and a little bit of peace for the first time in my life. That peace didn't last long. Because 2 months ago, there was a knock at my door. And standing there, like they hadn't thrown me out on my birthday all those years ago, were Karen and Dale, smiling, saying they needed a place to stay. And that's where things get interesting. They stood in the hallway like ghosts from a life I'd buried. Karen in her oversized windbreaker, Dale with that same old trucker cap he used to wear while yelling at the news. They looked smaller, older, and for a split second, I felt that old instinct rise up, the part of me that still wanted their approval, still half expected them to smile and say we're proud of you. But that wasn't why they were here. We were just passing through the city, my mom said casually, as if this was a coincidence. Thought we'd stop by? It's been so long, Braden. I stood there, silent. Part of me wanted to slam the door. But another part, the quieter, uncertain part, stepped back and said, come in. The moment they entered, it was like the air changed. Dale immediately started glancing around like he was appraising the furniture. Nice place, he muttered, brushing crumbs off the arm of my couch like it personally offended him. Karen walked straight into the kitchen, opened my fridge without asking, and said, oh good, you've got real food. I told Dale you'd be doing all right by now. Doing all right? They made themselves at home like I was a guest in my own apartment. I stood there, awkward, watching the two people who'd kicked me out on my birthday rummage through my things like it was their right. I finally asked, so, why are you really here? Karen closed the fridge slowly. We need a place to stay, just for a little while. Dale nodded, still surveying the living room like he was thinking of where to put his feet up. The house got foreclosed on. Caleb's couch isn't big enough. And you've got the space. There it was. No apology. No acknowledgement of the years of silence. Just a casual assumption that I'd open my door and give them what they wanted, like the scholarship money all over again. How long is a little while? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Karen waved a hand like it wasn't important. Until we get back on our feet. A few weeks, maybe a month. You'll barely notice us. I stared at them. You kicked me out. Dale frowned. That was a long time ago. You were being disrespectful. I was protecting the only thing I had. I snapped. And you threw me out for it. You didn't call. You didn't check if I was alive. Karen's voice softened, fake sweet. We just figured you'd be fine, Braden. You always were the smart one. Independent. You mean disposable, I said. She flinched, and for a moment, I thought I'd finally gotten through. But then her expression changed, hardened. She crossed her arms. We're your parents. We raised you. You owe us. That broke something in me. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just said no, but they didn't leave. Not that day. Not even after I told them I didn't have space for them. Karen started crying, or pretending to. She said they had nowhere to go, that I was their only hope. Dale stayed silent, staring at the wall behind me like this whole conversation bored him. Eventually, I told them they could stay for one night. One. They nodded, grateful. I slept with my door locked. The next morning, they were still there. Karen was making coffee with the last of my beans, and Dale had turned on the TV so loud it rattled the windows. "This isn't a hotel," I said. Karen looked up like I'd insulted her. "You said one night. We thought you'd reconsider after seeing how polite we were." Polite? I repeated myself. One night. I'm not changing my mind. They didn't fight me that time. They left, slowly, bitterly, and Karen made a point of saying, "You'll regret this. Family takes care of family." I didn't respond. But that wasn't the end of it. Not even close. Over the next few weeks, they started showing up. Unannounced. Sometimes late at night. Sometimes in the middle of the day when I was working remotely. My building had no doorman, just a basic lock, and somehow they always found a way in, either sweet-talking a neighbor or slipping in behind someone. It was like they had radar for when I was most vulnerable. Once, I came home from a long day at the office. I'd picked up an extra consulting gig to start saving for a down payment, and found them already inside. Karen had somehow convinced my downstairs neighbor to buzz them in, claiming they were visiting their sweet son, and forgot their key. I lost it. "You can't keep doing this." Karen had the audacity to say, "Well, if you'd just let us stay, we wouldn't have to." I changed the locks that weekend. I told my neighbors not to let anyone in unless I'd personally texted them. I thought it was over. But then the letters started. Handwritten notes left in my mailbox. Slid under my door. Taped to my windshield. "We raised you. We deserve this. Don't forget who gave you life. You'll be sorry when we're gone." Each one chipped away at me. I tried to ignore them, tried to work through it, tried to focus on my life. But it was like being haunted. And then the real betrayal came, from the one person I thought might actually understand. Caleb. He called out of the blue one afternoon, his voice way too casual. "Hey, little bro, heard Mom and Dad dropped by." I didn't say anything. He kept going. "Look, I know things were rough back then, but they're really struggling. You've got a good thing going now. Maybe just let them crash with you for a bit. It won't kill you." "Are you serious?" I said, heart pounding. "They're our parents, Braden. They took care of us." "No," I snapped. "They took care of you. They kicked me out. On my birthday." He had the nerve to laugh. "Yeah, but you landed on your feet. You're the success story. So be the bigger man." That call ended fast. I told him to lose my number if he was just going to guilt trip me. I hung up, shaking. That night, I got another knock at the door. I didn't answer. Another letter appeared under the door the next morning. But this time it wasn't Karen's loopy handwriting. It was Caleb's. "I tried to reason with you. If something happens to them, it's on you." I don't know what broke me more, the manipulation or the realization that Caleb had clearly taken their side. The golden boy had spoken, and once again, I was the villain in the family script. I kept my distance. I tried to move on. But then Karen and Dale escalated. They started telling people we knew, old neighbors, distant cousins, that I'd turned my back on them, that I'd stolen their retirement by keeping my scholarship money to myself, that I was hoarding wealth while they suffered. They painted this picture of a cold, arrogant son who'd gotten rich and forgotten his roots. One day, I walked into a local coffee shop and the barista, who knew my family, said, "Hey, are your parents doing okay? I heard you kicked them out or something." That's when I realized they weren't just harassing me. They were trying to ruin me, trying to twist the truth, make me the villain, force my hand. And then, as if it couldn't get worse, they tried to guilt me through work. Someone from HR forwarded me a voicemail that had been left on our company's general line. A woman's voice, saying she was my mother, that she was worried about me, that she hadn't heard from me in weeks and feared I was falling back into bad habits. She asked if someone could just check in. Said she didn't want me to end up like before. Before what? I hadn't done drugs. I hadn't been to therapy for anything serious beyond burnout and anxiety. But to someone who didn't know me, it sounded like a red flag. I was called into a meeting the next day. Nothing formal, just to check in. But it was humiliating. My boss asked if everything was okay at home, if I needed time off, if I was sure I wasn't overwhelmed. They had weaponized concern. That night, I sat in my living room, alone, lights off, just numb. I stared at my phone, thought about calling a lawyer, or the police, or Caleb. I didn't know what the right move was. And then I got the text, from a number I didn't recognize. A photo of my building, taken from the street, with one message. We're not going away, Braden. Family is forever. That was the moment. The breaking point. Something inside me snapped, but not in the way they wanted. And that's when I decided I wasn't just going to block them. I was going to end this. Legally. Publicly. Permanently. I didn't sleep that night. After getting that photo, that twisted little message, I just sat there, staring at it until the glow of my phone screen turned cold. My apartment was silent, but my brain wasn't. It was racing, tumbling through memories I hadn't touched in years. That photo wasn't just a threat. It was a reminder. Of the night I left home with nothing but a bag. Of the mornings I spent eating instant ramen cold because I didn't have a microwave in the shelter I stayed in for a week. Of the time I got a nosebleed during finals week and couldn't afford tissues, so I used old lecture notes to stop the bleeding in the back of the computer lab. I remembered it all. And now these same people, the ones who had left me out in the cold without a second thought, were standing outside my building, watching me, waiting. I felt sick, violated. I checked every lock, closed every blind, then did it again. I barely moved for hours. I called no one. I told no one. Because deep down, I still carried that old shame, the kind that whispered, you don't get to complain. You're lucky. You made it out. Be grateful. But this wasn't just about me anymore. They had gone too far. This wasn't family drama. This was stalking, harassment. And the worst part was that they still didn't think they were doing anything wrong. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I didn't have one on retainer or anything. I just Googled until I found someone local who specialized in civil harassment and family disputes. Her name was Tessa, and when I showed her the messages, the letters, and that photo, she didn't blink. This is serious, she said. You have a right to feel safe in your own home. Those words cracked something open in me, like I'd been holding my breath for years and didn't realize it. A right to feel safe. I'd never thought of it that way, not growing up in that house. Not when silence was the closest thing I got to love. Not when Caleb was praised for doing the bare minimum and I was punished for asking questions. Tessa walked me through the process of filing a restraining order. She explained what evidence would help, what the hearing would involve, and how to keep a paper trail. It felt overwhelming. I wasn't a fighter. I was the kid who avoided conflict, who learned to disappear when voices got too loud. But this time, I didn't disappear. Instead, I started documenting everything. Every message, every note, every time someone mentioned my parents in public with a confused expression. I even asked my neighbor to check the security footage in the hallway for the night I found the photo. It was there, a grainy clip of Karen, my mother, standing outside my door, slipping something under it and looking around like she knew what she was doing was wrong. That video broke me again, in a different way. Not because of the threat, but because of how calm she looked. How casual. As if this wasn't cruelty, it was just parenting. I was spiraling. I started flinching every time someone knocked. I kept checking the street before I left for work. I had a nightmare that Caleb showed up at my office and told my coworkers I was schizophrenic and dangerous. I woke up sweating, heart pounding, unsure of what was real. I hit rock bottom a week later. It was a Thursday. I was supposed to present a quarterly update on a project I'd led, something I'd poured myself into for 6 months. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't even make it through the door. I stood in the building's lobby, hand on the elevator button, and froze. I kept seeing their faces, hearing their voices. You owe us. You'll regret this. Family takes care of family. I walked out, called in sick, went home, and didn't leave for 2 days. That weekend, I turned off my phone and just sat on the floor of my apartment with all the curtains drawn. I didn't eat, didn't drink much. I didn't even cry. I just sat there, paralyzed by a kind of exhaustion I didn't know how to explain. But on the third day, I woke up angry. Not fiery, screaming angry. Just done. Done being the quiet one. Done being the good son. Done being the scapegoat. I got up, showered, opened all the windows, and blasted music just to feel something. Then I made a list. The kind of list I hadn't made since college, back when I was juggling 3 part-time jobs and 16 credits. It was titled, Rebuild. Finalize restraining order paperwork with Tessa. Install security cameras, inside and outside. Send formal cease and desist to Caleb. Talk to HR about the voicemail incident. Book a session with a therapist. I didn't do it all at once. That would have been impossible. But I started. And starting changed everything. I met with Tessa again and handed over my compiled documentation, neatly organized, tabbed, and labeled. She was impressed. You're thorough, she said. I just smiled. I had practice. I installed 2 security cameras, one above the front door, one covering the hallway. I posted clear signs. I wasn't trying to be sneaky. I wanted them to know I wasn't afraid anymore. I sent Caleb a letter through Tessa's office. A formal cease and desist, citing harassment and false statements. I didn't hear back, but I know he got it. The silence was louder than any apology he could have faked. I met with my HR manager and laid out everything. The history, the voicemail, the photo. Her eyes widened as she read through the timeline I'd printed. She looked at me differently after that. Not with pity, but with something like respect. "You're stronger than I realized," she said. I didn't feel strong, but I nodded anyway. And finally, I found a therapist named Jordan who specialized in family trauma and adult estrangement. The first session was awkward. I kept making jokes, deflecting. But then he said something that stuck with me. "Surviving is admirable, but thriving? That's the real revenge." That line lived in my head for days. And slowly, I started to thrive. I started running in the mornings. Not for weight or looks, but just to burn off the anxiety. I stopped checking the blinds every 10 minutes. I started sleeping with the bedroom door open. That was huge. I reconnected with an old friend from college, Malia, who'd always been kind to me. We got coffee, then dinner, then started seeing each other more. She was the first person I told everything to, unfiltered. No softening the edges. No downplaying the pain. She didn't flinch. She just listened. And when I showed her one of the letters, the one where Karen wrote, "We should have stopped trying after Caleb. At least he knows loyalty," she didn't get angry for me. She got angry with me. "You deserve better," she said. "And you're building it." That line became my new anchor. I worked harder than ever. Took on a leadership role at work. Led a successful pitch that landed a new client. I started saving more aggressively, watching my account balance climb past numbers I never thought I'd see. I looked at condos. I applied for speaking slots at tech conferences. I finally started designing a software product I'd dreamed about since college, something that helped people track and organize family law documents for self-represented litigants. Because if there was one thing I knew now, it was that not everyone has a Tessa. Not everyone gets the help they need. And I wanted to change that. But just as things were stabilizing, just as I finally felt like I was free, something happened that reminded me this war wasn't over. A letter arrived. No return address. Different handwriting this time. Sloppier, rushed. Inside was a single line. "You might have a lawyer, but we have stories." And a USB drive. When I first saw the USB drive, I stared at it like it might explode. It was small, nondescript, the kind of cheap plastic stick you might get at a trade show, but the weight of it felt heavy in my hand. Heavier than it should have. I didn't plug it in right away. I sat at my desk, staring at the blinking cursor on my monitor, the drive resting beside my keyboard like a ticking bomb. My thoughts went in circles. What was on it? What did they mean by "we have stories"? Were they threatening me with lies? Blackmail? Or worse, some twisted version of the truth? Eventually, I booted up an old laptop I hadn't used in years. No personal files, no login to my work network. I disabled Wi-Fi, opened a fresh guest account, and plugged in the drive. Inside was a single folder labeled Braden_proof. I opened it. There were 4 video files. No descriptions, no names. Just dates. The first was dated 2 months prior. I clicked play, and immediately felt the blood drain from my face. It was a video of my mom, sitting in her car, crying, or pretending to cry. The camera was angled just enough to catch her face, and she kept glancing at it like she wanted to make sure it was recording. She was saying things like, "We just want to see our son. We raised him, and now he won't even answer the door." She spoke in that soft, wobbly tone people use when they're trying to sound heartbroken. It was a performance. A disgusting, manipulative performance. The next video was worse. Dale was standing outside my apartment, speaking to the camera with this rehearsed solemnity. "If anything happens to us," he said, "it's on Braden. We tried to reach out. We tried everything." At one point he looked off screen and said, "Should I mention the scholarship?" And Karen's voice whispered, "Yes, but say it was a misunderstanding, not theft." The third video was from Caleb. He was seated at a dining table, probably at his apartment, based on the blurry background. His tone was less emotional and more calculated. He said, "Braden's always had issues. He isolates himself. He cuts people out when they don't agree with him. We just want him to get help." He even cited my therapy appointment, the the one I'd mentioned to him in passing years ago, as proof that I had a pattern. The fourth video was just a screen recording of an email from me, from years ago, an old reply I sent to Caleb in college where I said, "I can't take this anymore. Sometimes I feel like disappearing." Out of context, it sounded dramatic, dangerous, even, especially with the narration Caleb added over it. He said things like this before. "He won't talk to us. We're worried he's unstable." I sat there, watching these people, my family, build a false narrative of a mentally unstable son, of abusive, cold-hearted behavior, of paranoia, of cruelty. They weren't trying to reconcile. They were preparing a smear campaign, maybe for court, maybe for friends, maybe for the internet, and they were filming it like they were the victims. I unplugged the drive, sat back, and for a moment, I didn't feel anger. I felt calm, because now I knew exactly who they were, not just in my memories, but in their own words, on video. This wasn't gaslighting anymore. This was evidence, and I was done playing defense. It was time to go on offense. The next morning, I booked a follow-up with Tessa. I walked into her office with the USB drive, my security footage, screenshots of the messages, and a binder labeled Harassment Evidence, Karen and Dale, Timeline. She flipped through it, her brows rising as she skimmed. "Braden," she said, looking up, "this isn't just enough for a restraining order. This is strong enough for civil litigation." I nodded. "I want to go all the way." She asked if I was ready for what that would mean, the hearings, the exposure, the possibility of them turning public opinion against me. I said, "They already did that. Now I'm just catching up." And from that moment on, I stopped reacting. I started planning. Step 1, cut them off completely. No more texts. No more calls. I blocked their numbers, locked down every social account, and upgraded my building security. I added facial recognition entry for myself and set up alerts for any motion outside my door. The cameras now had cloud backups. I left nothing to chance. I even hired a private investigator, Malia's suggestion. She knew someone from a former case who specialized in digital surveillance. The guy, Javier, was discreet but efficient. Within a week, he had footage of Karen and Dale sitting outside my old high school in their car, talking to someone, possibly a reporter, and feeding them lines about how I had abandoned my roots and let success change me. They were already trying to spin their story into something bigger. And if that was their plan, then I had to make sure my story was louder. Step 2, control the narrative. I started documenting everything, publicly, not in a messy Reddit post or a viral TikTok. I created a clean, professional blog, just a small corner of the internet, password protected, that I shared with only a few trusted people at first. It was titled Surviving Estrangement, a journal. I wrote about what it meant to grow up in a household where you were never enough, where success became currency, something your parents tried to steal the moment it materialized. I never used names, never accused directly, but I told the truth. And slowly, quietly, the site got traction. Other estranged children reached out. Some shared their own stories. Some just said thank you. It gave me a strange strength, knowing I wasn't alone, that I wasn't crazy. And then the email came. A producer from a mid-tier podcast on family trauma and legal drama wanted to interview me. They had found the blog through someone else and said my story resonated. At first, I hesitated. Going public was risky. I didn't want to be that guy, the one airing his family's dirty laundry. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized they'd already done that. They'd filmed fake videos, twisted my words, painted me as unstable. If I was going to be portrayed as the villain in someone else's story, I'd rather tell the truth in my own. So I said yes. The interview wasn't flashy, just audio. 45 minutes of me telling my story, slowly, calmly, clearly. I didn't attack. I didn't name names. But I laid out the facts. The eviction, the scholarship, the stalking, the smear campaign. The episode aired 3 weeks later. Within a day, it had 10,000 plays. Within a week, it had over 100,000. Strangers started reaching out. Therapists, authors, even a lawyer from another state who said she was starting a nonprofit to help young adults facing forced homelessness from family manipulation. She asked if I'd join the advisory board. I said yes. And somewhere in the middle of all that, something shifted in me. I no longer felt like I was surviving. I was rising. Step 3, hit where it hurts. Legally, the hearing date for the restraining order was finally set. Tessa and I prepared like it was trial. We rehearsed my statement, lined up witnesses, including my HR manager and Malia, and submitted the USB drive and security footage as formal evidence. But we didn't stop there. Tessa filed a parallel suit: emotional damages, defamation, and invasion of privacy. The videos, especially the ones where they discussed spinning false narratives, gave us leverage. And when Javier's footage confirmed they had tried to mislead a reporter, that opened the door for intent to harm. The best part? They had no idea what was coming. As far as Karen and Dale knew, I was still rattled. Quiet. Beaten down. That's how they liked me. Easy to control, easy to guilt. So I stayed silent. Let them stew. Until the court summons arrived. And then, like clockwork, the call started again, this time from a different number. Braden, what is this? A lawsuit? Are you insane? I didn't answer. They left voicemails, emails, even sent a handwritten apology that reeked of insincerity. But I didn't flinch. Because revenge, I was learning, didn't have to be loud. It just had to be smart. And now, I was ready to play that game better than they ever imagined. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. I don't know why I'd pictured something grand, with echoing footsteps and polished mahogany. In reality, it was just a beige room with harsh lighting and a faint smell of coffee and old paper. But for what it lacked in drama, it made up for intention. You could feel it, the energy in the room, thick and quiet, like the moment before a thunderstorm. I was seated beside Tessa at the petitioner's table, calm on the outside, but wired tight on the inside. My palms were sweating. I kept my hands under the table so no one would see. Across from me, Karen and Dale were whispering furiously to their attorney, a man in a wrinkled suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Karen was dressed like she was going to church. Pearls, floral dress, the works. Dale wore a suit jacket over a t-shirt that said, "World's #1 Dad." I wasn't sure if the irony was intentional or just tone deaf. They didn't look at me. Not once. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The hearing began. Tessa opened with a clear, composed summary of the harassment, detailing every visit, every letter, every escalation. She presented the timeline, the motion-activated security footage, the screenshots, the USB drive. She spoke like a surgeon, precise, controlled, unemotional. Then came the witness statements. Malia went first. She described the night I found the photo, how shaken I was, how I checked every window, how I didn't sleep for days. Her voice cracked once, but she held steady. My HR manager spoke next, confirming the voicemail and the odd email that followed. She mentioned how I'd been pulled into a wellness meeting over concerns that were later revealed to be unfounded, manufactured. Then, it was my turn. I stood. My voice was steady, but my hands were trembling slightly. I told the court everything, from the birthday eviction to the relentless pressure, the stalking, the smear campaign. I didn't dramatize. I didn't embellish. I just told the truth. They didn't just try to manipulate me, I said. They tried to destroy me. When they couldn't control my future, they tried to rewrite my past. There was a pause when I finished. The judge nodded and turned to their side. Karen asked to speak. She stood up slowly, clutching a tissue like it was a prop. Her voice was watery and trembling. We're his parents. We never meant to hurt him. We didn't know how to reach him. We were scared for him. Everything we did, it came from love. The judge asked, "Did you record videos falsely portraying your son as mentally unstable?" Karen hesitated. "They weren't false, Your Honor. He has had issues. He's always been distant. Difficult." Tessa stood. "Your Honor, with respect, being private and independent is not a mental illness." Dale finally spoke, loudly. "This is ridiculous. He's making us out to be monsters just because we wanted to see him. We gave him everything." The judge raised a hand. "Sir, please sit. You'll have a chance to speak through your attorney." But their attorney didn't say much. He looked at the evidence, looked at his clients, and offered a limp defense that boiled down to "this is a misunderstanding." The judge called for a short recess before the decision. I stepped into the hallway with Tessa. Malia joined us. No one said much. We just stood in a quiet triangle, breathing slowly, watching the seconds tick by. 15 minutes later, we were called back in. The judge's decision was swift, thorough, and brutal in its clarity. A 5-year restraining order was granted, maximum length, prohibiting Karen and Dale from contacting me in any form, approaching my residence or place of work, or using any third party to communicate on their behalf. Any violation would result in immediate arrest. The judge also referred the matter to civil court with a strong recommendation that the defamation and emotional distress claims proceed. She noted the video footage as deeply disturbing and indicative of sustained malice. Then she turned to them. You are not victims. You are manipulators. This court does not exist to validate false narratives or emotional blackmail. You have crossed a line, and Mr. Braden has every right to protect his peace. When the gavel came down, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. But it wasn't just relief, it was closure. The civil case moved forward. Slowly, as they do, but the momentum was on our side. Their lawyer tried to negotiate a settlement early, a quiet agreement, no admission of guilt, a small financial sum. We declined. I didn't want silence. I wanted truth. I wanted a record. I wanted them to have to answer for what they did, not just in my life, but on paper. The suit took 7 months to resolve. During discovery, we found more emails between Karen and Caleb discussing ways to make Braden look unbalanced. A private group chat with relatives gossiping about me. Screenshots of social media posts where they hinted at being cut off by a narcissistic son. It all came out. When they realized how deep the evidence ran, they crumbled. We settled, eventually, on my terms. They issued a written apology, drafted by our legal team, to be made public in the same online spaces where they had defamed me. They agreed to pay damages for emotional distress, which I donated in full to a scholarship fund for estranged students. And they agreed to a no-contact order that extended beyond the restraining order's expiration. I haven't seen them since. As for Caleb, he never contacted me again. Last I heard, he moved to Florida with his girlfriend and changed jobs twice in the same year. I could have pursued him legally. We had enough to include him in the civil suit, but I didn't. Not because I forgave him, but because he's not worth the effort. I don't think he'll ever change. I think, deep down, he enjoyed being the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, who stood on the pedestal while I took the fall. And I think he'll keep trying to be someone important by stepping on other people to stay tall. But not me. Not anymore. The fallout wasn't just legal. People started reaching out. Old classmates. A few distant cousins. Even a couple of teachers from high school who remembered how quiet I was, how hard I worked. They said they'd heard the story through the podcast or the blog or mutual friends. They said they were sorry, that they wished they'd seen what I was going through. One of them, my sophomore math teacher, sent me a message that made me pause. I always thought you were brave for asking questions when no one else would. I'm glad the world finally sees who you are. That hit harder than I expected. I still run the blog. It's grown into something more now. A small community, moderated and safe. We host workshops, guest posts. We even launched a yearly scholarship for students who've been financially cut off by their families. Last year, we helped 3 kids cover their first semester. I keep my personal life quieter now. Malia and I are still together. She's the first person I've ever truly felt safe with. Not because she fixes everything, but because she listens. She doesn't try to rewrite my story. She just holds it with me. I still go to therapy. Still have days where the weight of it all sneaks up on me. In a smell, a song, a dream. But those days are fewer now. And when they come, I know how to ride them out. Because I know who I am. Not the scapegoat. Not the problem. Not the failure. Just Braden. A man who rebuilt his life, brick by brick, truth by truth. People always ask me if I miss them. My parents. The family I lost. And I tell them the truth. I didn't lose them. They were never mine to begin with. And the day I stopped chasing their love was the day I found peace.